Stuart,
Yes, I agree with you, Christian, about some Australian films being disappointing this year. I did like The Correspondent. I thought that worked particularly well.
yeah, I agree. That was a solid film from earlier in the year, and perhaps could have been seen by more people. But unfortunately, the film, I think the film suffered from being a bit sort of similar to things that we perhaps looking at it this way. And again, this is I have a memory better than perhaps a recollection of better than many people, but. Perhaps when thinking back to something as solid as Bangkok Hilton with Nicole Kidman, which is of course the Peter Miller, sorry, George Miller uh, miniseries that ran back in the 80s, I think that by comparison is perhaps now the gold standard of Australian miniseries drama, and I think when you think about The Correspondent, even though it was a worthy picture, it certainly wasn't at perhaps at that level. And I would just again, I just don't quite understand why we seem to be going backwards when we've had so many examples throughout history where um, Australian cinema has been embraced and Australian TV movies have really been at a really high level. And I'd just love to see us get back to that point where we're making consistently good drama for people for audiences that exist and and audiences reciprocate by coming to the cinema or watching in droves.
Fair enough. No, I absolutely understand where you're coming from on that. All right, let's now talk about the year ahead. You've got a number of strong releases coming up from Christmas, Boxing Day onwards.
That is very, very true, Peter. Like I sort of said to a few people, I think when we look ahead, we know that there is an extraordinary lineup of films on the horizon, and most of them seem to be landing in January and February. On January 1, we get Ray Fiennes in The Corral, which of course follows. A great appearance in 28 years later, as well as Conclave at the very beginning of the year, which is an outstanding drama, which was perhaps one of my favourite films that was released in the last 12 months. And this is from Alan Bennett, playwright Alan Bennett, and it's a moving drama set during the World War II period about a choir put together in the absence of any real performers because everybody's off fighting the war. Also on January 1, we've got an extraordinary piece of Chinese cinema called Resurrection from filmmaker Bi Gan. And this is an homage to cinema, kind of tracing cinema history over a century through a series of separate stories. And yeah, for people who love movies and love cinema and love delving into the history of cinema, this is a real gift. And also on the 1st of January, we've got an exceptional drama starring Hugh Jackman and Kate Hudson, based on a true story called Song Sung Blue, about a Neil Diamond impersonator played by Jackman, who meets a woman who he teams up with and puts together perhaps the most iconic Neil Diamond tribute show you've ever seen. So they all open on New Year's Day and bring people a great variety of cinema to kind of ring in the new year with. Shortly after that, we have Nouvelle Vague, which is a terrific film that was premiered earlier in the year from Richard Linklater, which accounts the creation of Godard's Breathless, and sort of the beginning of the French New Wave. And it's sort of shot and made and edited in that style, which is really, really interesting. So again, something that will be a perfect thing for people who really love cinema to come along and enjoy. And then, like I said, we've got the follow up to 28 years later. 28 years later, The Bone Temple, which also sees Ray Fiennes. So we've got double Ray Fiennes coming in January. That'll arrive, and that of course follows on one from Danny Boyle's film, which was released a couple of months ago now, and really a great return to that franchise that sort of rebooted the zombie drama. Then we have Chloe Zhao's Hamnet, which is considered a very, very strong frontrunner for the Best Picture Academy Award, which is inspired by the life of William Shakespeare and his wife. And then we've got a great movie from South Korea called No Other Choice from director Park Chan-wook. And this is a kind of an unpredictable, kooky comedy drama about a man who loses his job and then goes to extraordinary lengths in order to try and make sure that he's the only candidate in the market in order to get another job working in a rather obscure industry. So, that's the sort of thing that we've got coming out in early January. And then later on in January, we've got an outstanding film called Marty Supreme, starring Timothy Chalamet as a ping pong player who decides that it's upon him to try and elevate the sport on a global level. Also opening around the same time on the 22nd of January is one of the standouts from Cannes earlier on this year called The Secret Agent. And this is an outstanding film from South America, which again is all these movies that seem to be paying homage to cinema more generally. And this is an absolutely almost uncategorizable drama about a man trying to trace his family history during a period of great turmoil or under military dictatorship. And this is it stars Wagner Maurer, who people might remember from the film Civil War, which Kirsten Dunst starred in last year. And it is truly an absolutely sensational piece of cinema. So we've just got so many great movies coming up. Add to that things like the Palme d'Or winner, No Other Choice, as well as Blue Moon, starring Ethan Hawke, again directed by Richard Linklater. It just keeps coming and coming and coming. And that's just all the upscale stuff. There was an article yesterday in one of the trade magazines talking about how the blockbusters that were coming next year from the likes of Christopher Nolan mid-year doing The Odyssey, which is a passion project of his. Steven Spielberg is returning with an original science fiction film about an alien invasion, it would seem, but who knows. As well as, of course, not for Nova, but later on in the year for the multiplexes, audiences can look forward to a new film from the Avengers franchise. So I think that 2026 is going to be a year that brings a lot of extraordinary must-see cinema for audiences to enjoy, but it'll also be a year of perhaps a bit of uncertainty given current headlines surrounding the possible sale of Warner Brothers to the streaming service Netflix. But look, showbiz is never not interesting, and so I think all those sort of things are kind of politics rather than important when it comes to audiences. So I think if you're a moviegoer who just loves going to the movies, you're going to be very, very well served in 2026.
Absolutely agree with you. And I should also add Rental Family, which I saw at the Nova Christmas party, which was a terrific film
Yeah,
as
that's
well.
correct. Yeah. We've got some amazing films opening on Boxing Day. Rental Family, starring Brendan Fraser, which is an outstanding comedy drama, and I think perhaps one of the most perfect examples of how to cast an actor who wins best actor at the Academy Awards after being in the wilderness for 20 years. This is the perfect kind of follow-up for him after he won the Oscar for his performance in The Whale. And of course, on Boxing Day, there's also an outstanding film that debuted at Cannes called Sentimental Value from the filmmaker behind Worst Person in the World. So, Boxing Day as well is going to bring a lot of really great movies too, and including a very, very enjoyable piece of pulp called The Housemaid, starring Sydney Sweeney
Yes.
and Amanda Seyfried, which is based on a best-selling novel, but perhaps is one of the most enjoyable rides at the cinema over the holiday season.
I agree with you. It was a lot of fun. And just a very quick final thing, the Oscars telecast issue. Now, I gather for the next 3 years, it's still going to be free to air on television, but it's from 2029 that the Oscars will be on YouTube.
That's interesting. Yeah, I read that too just the other day. So traditionally here in Australia, originally it was on Channel 9 for many years, and the last couple of years it's moved over to Channel 7. But in the United States, it was being telecast by the ABC network for I believe decades. And so this is quite a seismic shift to see the Academy Awards go on YouTube. But I suppose what it does do is it just allows the Academy Awards to ultimately catch up with how people are engaging with this sort of content. I mean, for many years, it was very difficult in Australia to see things like the Golden Globe Awards or even the SAG Awards, the Screen Actors Guild Awards. These are award shows that obviously have niche, niche appeal for audiences who are really, really engaged on that level. So I suppose by putting the Academy Awards on YouTube, ultimately it just means that more people will have the opportunity to see the telecast, and perhaps might be the case. I mean, we're lucky that we get it on free to air here in Australia, but that's not necessarily the case elsewhere. So I suppose it's a little bit about democratization, I suppose, of people being able to see the show as they wish. But certainly, it's an interesting harbinger, perhaps, of where things are going in terms of broadcast television rather than cinema, because it's just sort of showing more and more that when it comes to TV as we know it, it's moving more and more online because ultimately that's exactly what the streaming services are providing just behind a paywall. So it's just going and duplicating that, just but making it free in the process.
Yes, I understand. Brave new world, as they say. So, okay.
Yes, indeed.
Kristian Connelly, thank you so much, CEO of the Nova Cinema in Melbourne. Go and see a film. You've got 16 screens to see them on at the Nova Cinema, and terrific films ahead as well. And thanks for your best of list as well. Kristian, thank you so much.
Thank you, Peter.
Okay, bye bye.
See you later.